everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy Mother's Day for those of you who are all moms. So, I guess maybe technically I also am, if you consider my cat. I don't know. But, pets are family, so I guess if you want to say the same thing for the same reason, I won't take offense to it. But I want to talk a little bit about emotion work and how these emotional waves can actually be really, really hard on me. Not just because I think emotions are hard and negative emotions could be draining as they are, but when you have a chronic illness, this is something that also bleeds into that aspect, because when you're having negative emotions or rough emotional time, this can actually sometimes result in your condition becoming a lot worse. So that's what I want to get into today. Just a couple of housekeeping things before I get into this particular video today. I am outside too, so I can't control the sounds. Not great for a podcast episode, so I don't know if I'll release this one to the podcast, but I'm hoping to at least just have it on YouTube. Maybe I'll share it in video format. We'll see. We'll see how I feel about it when I go back. But I want to talk about this emotion work just because I think it's important, and it's very applicable to today. And you'll notice that we're into a season 2 on the podcast, and this is because my content is probably going to take a major shift starting in the last week. So I am on this whole journey with non-duality, and I've been slowly feeling a change since my retreat, but it's only gotten stronger, especially in the last few weeks to a couple of months, which is why there just hasn't been the content, because it's very, very hard for me to make content that was the way I was doing it before. Now I almost need to be like in the moment. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we actually get into this today. So moving forward, content is probably going to be sporadic, but I'll probably be doing it on the days that I feel I want to. I don't know about short content going forward. I usually make that up ahead of time, and I think what I just need to do is just schedule it out onto YouTube, and then that puts the pressure on me to actually put it out to the other platforms too. So I think what I might do is do a bunch of short content again and just try to get those out there, because people really do like the short content and all of that, and there'll be sections that I can clip out of these ones too. But anyways, so that's kind of what's going to happen with the short content, but I'm wanting to focus on these longer videos so that I get podcast content, and talking about some of these things requires a decent amount of time, and it's kind of the way that I therapeutically also kind of digest what's going on, to be honest. Some people write them down, other people might do poetry. For me, I make video content. That has been my therapy and why I started actually talking about my IIH journey to begin with. So now I want to get into doing the same for my experience with the meditation and non-duality stuff and experience, as well as getting into how that affects my migraines, because when it comes to some of these, it can definitely bleed over, as I'm going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's just get into it, I guess. So I am going through a bit of a rough emotional patch. I've actually felt this building up now for, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. So you can start to feel the emotions building up. And like, you kind of, at least for me, I kind of just, in the moment, I can kind of get through those emotions. It's kind of weird to talk about it, but in the moment with emotions, like, it's not like it just builds and builds and builds until the volcano explodes like it used to before. There's definitely, like, what I would call tea kettling. You might have heard this term if you follow Dr. Rachel Zoffness, who talks about the importance of letting frustrations out with chronic pain and chronic illness, and kind of in the form of a tea kettle. So like a tea kettle will slowly let its pressure out. And I mean, that kind of happens with this as well, but I feel like these deeper and more inner things that you start to dive into when you get further into this process, it builds up and bubbles for a little bit, and like you might release some of it, but I don't think you release all of it. At least I don't think I do. I'll see. My wrist feels so bare right now. I usually like to leave my watch off on days that I'm off, just because it's not that comfortable. So if I do release this on the podcast and I'm talking about my wrist and kind of rubbing my wrist and you can hear that, I'm not sure if you can or not, but that's just because I'm feeling a little bit lost without my watch on. I totally didn't realize I didn't have it on. But anyways, so getting into this like emotion work is just like, it is no joke. It is, and it's hard. And the thing is when I'm more emotionally volatile, I feel it like in here. I feel it in my head a lot more. Now it's changed from what it used to be. So like a really rough emotional time before could have triggered a migraine attack or an IIH resurgence, or I don't know if you want to call that a flare-up maybe. I don't really know what the right word is. But if I was to have a really, really rough emotional time, and this would often happen with like a bad checkup or just being overall frustrated that I couldn't do what I wanted to do in my everyday life just because of how much pain I was in, or, you know, wanting to have that thirst for normalcy, but then not having the ability to do that. That's kind of where the emotions and the frustration would bubble up a few years ago. Now can be things that happen during the day, or, you know, just then again, with this whole path with me, it can just pop out of nowhere. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning with just soaked eyes, and there may be even like, I'm just gonna wait for the car to pass. There may be even like no real reason for it. Like my life is, in the moment, feels pretty much perfect, or like I'm satisfied with everything. There's nothing to complain about in that moment. And I mean, that's how it is a lot of the time if you don't put thoughts to it. But that feeling, those negative emotions can still be there even in that moment. So it's like so weird. Like the emotions can just come out randomly, and you could be digging at something that's been there for like years and years at a time, and you don't know the reason for it. And getting into this not knowing is something I had to learn to accept, having a condition with the term idiopathic in it as well, because with idiopathic, it means essentially the doctors don't know why you have something. Like a lot of autoimmune conditions, you don't know the cause of it, but at least you know, like, oh, it's my body attacking whatever cells. I don't know why or how this happened, but at least you kind of have a mechanism there. With an idiopathic condition, like with IIH, you don't get that same answer. It's left in limbo, and it's essentially a rule out. So they've ruled out all of the possible reasons why you may have the condition, and they don't understand why. Or they're not able to fully prove it. I've talked about this in the past, but there's a couple of things that I'm suspicious of that may have led to my condition, but I will never be able to prove it, so it's still idiopathic. But yeah, so with this strong emotional release, because of the intensity of the emotions, it can lead to extra pain, essentially. So I can be having a rougher time with my migraines. I can be feeling a little bit more upset, and I could be feeling more symptoms. Like I tend to feel stress majorly in the back of my neck, and down my spine actually. Like my back has been quite sore for the past few days, and I think it's because I built up a lot of emotion actually in my spine. So like, it's really weird to say that, and if you're to say that to a doctor, they would be probably not really on board with it. Like, they'd still look for causes. But what people need to understand is that you can hold emotions in your body. So yeah, I apologize for the noise. I wanted to be outside. It is gorgeous out. Like, I am in t-shirt and shorts, and like, it is so nice. But construction is going on. So yeah. With that being said, because you're building up that emotion in the actual, like, in the moment, basically, you may have more symptoms. Hi, Anne. Thanks for joining. I'm talking about emotion work today because it was valid. If any of you who are following me because of being in Zubin's supporter tribe, I posted a little bit about what happened, about why I believe this emotional thing has been triggered in our community on locals. So make sure to read through that if you haven't. But I've had this building up. I don't know if it's related or if it just one triggered the other, or if they're even related at all, or if it's just coincidence. I really don't know. It really doesn't matter to me. Ultimately, in the end, like I said, I've been feeling this build up for a couple of weeks now. And like, it's interesting to actually watch. So like, for me, with the emotion and this emotion work, like, I'm doing it a lot at certain times of the month because I'll be having more pain. So I really dive into like the pain in the moment. I use actually pain a lot in my meditation because it's a sensation that's there in the moment, but there's nothing truly usually wrong in that moment. So it's a really, really good meditation object, at least I find. So I feel these like waves of like, oh, things are really up right now. I'm really, really happy. Things are going really well. Then it'll go into neutral for a while where I'm like, meh, things are all right. Things are going well, but something seems to be in the background where it's just not ideal. And that'll be the thoughts for a little while. And then it'll go where this just overwhelmingly becomes negative, or what we have labeled negative emotions. I don't even like the term negative emotions anymore. How weird is that? Like, I don't really like the term negative emotions because it's our brain putting a label on those emotions. It's saying these emotions should not be here right now, make them go away. That is how it feels like in the moment, and it just seems so wrong. But I just want to say, so like, things like something upsets you that happens in the day, you feel betrayed, you have anger, guilt, sadness, grief, all of those type of things, which is interesting also in a way because I noticed this a lot when I had and was dealing with my chronic illness when it was at its worst. So like, my relationship with my chronic illness would go through these natural waves. I noticed it very easily, but what I didn't notice is that this happens truly in real life as well. So like, this emotional pattern happens in real life as well. It's just that because I think it stood out a little bit more with the emotion work at the time with my IIH and migraines, that it stood out more. So I find that really interesting. I just figured that out actually right now. Like, the fact that those stood out so much, and yet I didn't notice that in just average life, and now I am, that there's that natural ebb and flow of, negative to positive emotions is just really interesting. That being said, the weird thing about, waking up in the middle of the night, I actually had such a rough day yesterday that I actually was crying going to sleep. So, and it was really weird because like, sorry, I've got like a bug here or something. I'm not used to insects. They're coming out again. It's so nice out that the bugs are out again. Only good thing about winter is that there's no bugs to like bite you and all of that. But anyways, now I totally lost track of what I was gonna say. Dang it, I hate when that happens. Okay. So anyways, getting into this emotional release is that the weird thing is when it happens, like, and then you try to, like, I really try and meditate and look into the possible reasons why it might be there, which is actually really interesting because it gets into my head. But if I try to pinpoint, I don't really try to get rid of the emotion. I try and figure out what's going on right now that could be causing these emotions. And I don't always find my answer. In fact, I very rarely find my answer, but that's just the reality of the situation. So when I'm in those moments of really, really strong emotions, and like, this can be like kind of the very, very positive feeling and gratitude that happens when you're in a very positive part feeling. And then this can be the really, really rough emotions, your brain trying to figure out, okay, what is causing me to feel these, what are considered negative emotions? And I notice myself now trying to figure out, well, if there's a way to address it, maybe I can make it go away instead of just sitting with it. And I think it's really important that I just let myself sit with these negative emotions. I think it's really, really important that, you know, I have, oh great, I hope that's a bee because I hate wasps. It looks like a bee. It's awfully big, I think, to be a wasp. Anyways, and it's not bugging me, so that's good. One thing of filming outside is that you have bugs you got to deal with. Anyways, so with these emotion releases, especially with what we'll call negative emotions, again, I don't really like that term for reasons I just talked about, but let's consider this grief, sadness, frustration, those kind of things. It's really, really interesting how much resistance there is to that feeling, because let's face it, we've all been there. The most exhausting times in your life is when you're dealing with extreme grief or sadness. I don't know anyone else, but like the grief and sadness is physically exhausting. Like, for those of you who have been through the death of a family member, you will have understood that. I don't know if everyone who's watching this has, but if you're older, you probably have experienced that before. And just take a deep dive down and how exhausting that is. That's kind of how I'm feeling today, actually, because of this really, really powerful emotional release that I had. So it was last night, I fell asleep really, really emotional. So I was crying, actually, before I fell asleep. It felt horrible in the moment, but it felt so good afterwards. And I relaxed, actually. I relaxed pretty well. I actually had a fairly good sleep until about 4:30 this morning. I woke up, had to go to the bathroom because I don't think I went before I went to bed. And usually if I don't go before I go to bed, well, nature calls during the night. I don't know if that's too much information, but that's what's coming out right now. So that's what I'm going to share. So getting into that, I woke up at 4:30 this morning. The sun was actually just rising. And I had to go to the bathroom, and then I came back, and I could tell another wave of emotions was about to be released. It's very strange, actually, to have these periods where you're like in the moment, and then like sleeping, and then you wake up and your like eyes are just like totally teary-eyed. I don't know if any of you feel that, have ever had that happen, but like, and the craziest thing is that when it comes to this emotional release, I come from a family where we're very emotional people, and although personally I do tend to have repressed my emotions in the past, particularly anger, sadness, grief, like it's like I don't know if it's because I don't like to show my vulnerability in front of people. I don't really know what it is, and it's not really important to me right at the moment. But when showing my vulnerability to people, it really has to be people that I'm really, really close with. And even still, there's resistance, which is absolutely fascinating. I don't know if it's the resistance to showing that negative emotion, or if it's the resistance to really feeling into that period of uncomfortableness and the exhaustion that leads to it afterwards. I don't know what it is, and that would maybe be like something that is never answered 100%, but that's what I've noticed. So anyways, getting back to 4:30 this morning and these emotional releases, one of my biggest fears actually around this is because of the job I have, I'm not openly able to just tea kettle in the moment. Like, there's some times where it's just not appropriate for me to like burst into an emotional release, which is unfortunate in a way, but thankfully, because this is where my meditation practice has been really actually critical for me, particularly right now, because I'm in a time where I'm struggling, because I get rid of so much of that emotional repression and emotional baggage. Even this stuff is so hard to talk about, but let's just say that I get rid of so much of that emotion during my meditation sessions. Those meditation sessions are even more critical now. So like, I get rid of a lot of, between the time that I'm at home and feel the comfort to release those negative emotions, like, honestly, I'm getting to the point where I really don't care about when these emotions release, but it's not appropriate for the setting when I'm at work. It's unfortunate. I think our society would be so much better if people were able to be comfortable and to be able to tea kettle these things out. I don't think we'd see the rage-induced behavior or the anger-induced behavior or the frustration-induced behavior that we see, because people aren't comfortable expressing these emotions because they will have gotten them off of their chest, or at least gotten them out in a safe way before they were to ever get to a point where the volcano is ready to explode. So I think that's just something that's really interesting that I've discovered, is that although I come from a family where we're openly able to express emotions, how much I hide it. And I don't know, I'm guessing it's probably from conditioning, from sorry, there's a bee again. I like I said, I can't tell which one it is. I'm guessing it's a bee. Our wasps usually aren't out until around August. So anyways, all good. I have been just stung by wasps for no reason whatsoever. I'm not allergic, it's just that I don't like them. So because you can like be fine with a bee, like it won't bother you as long as you aren't basically swatting at it, but a wasp will sting you no matter what. Okay, so with the, yeah, so that's emotional repression, and I think how much society would benefit from having an emotional release be, you know, something that we accepted rather than something that we're taught to repress. And like I said, I think this conditioning is from school, it's from work, it's from being around other people that are uncomfortable with showing emotions. And although it's perfectly acceptable to do it at home, it might not be in the moment when you're somewhere else, which is unfortunate. So yeah, anyways, I just want to briefly talk about this effect on my migraines. So I am in my week before my period, so it can be an increased time for pain and an increased time where I can be dealing with symptoms. That being said, I have also timed it so that my needle, I think, was about a week and a half ago or so. So theoretically, I should be at a fairly decent dose of my Aimovig. So that being said, it's not going to prevent 100% of migraines, but what it does do is it changes the way that my migraines behave generally. So I tend to experience some different symptoms during these times. So although I may not have a full-on blown migraine like I used to have in the past, negative emotions, or this tea kettling essentially, can create periods where other symptoms are more common. Things like pain in my neck, pain in my back, pain in just overall feeling of just, you know, feeling exhausted, feeling fatigued, not wanting to do certain things that I would normally enjoy, not wanting to do much of anything actually. So it can be a very contracted period despite not having much symptoms in terms of like what people would think of as a migraine. Like there may not be the whole effect on my head essentially, but there's still often symptoms. And it can change depending on what's going on essentially. So it's been a very different reaction, I guess, from my body compared to what it used to be before the Aimovig was on a tool, my biological tool essentially. And it's even changing now with where I am on this path, and it's extremely hard to explain, and I am skeptical about it every time I talk about it. But there is this change in relationship with my chronic illness because of all of this. I'm not going to get into that today because it's a totally different topic, but yeah, so that's what can happen. And so although I think, that being said, although it can affect this part, like my migraines, and give me extra symptoms with dealing with these negative emotions, it's worse to let the emotions bubble up, honestly. So I have less symptoms when I can tea kettle it out. I'm gonna have to move probably here. Okay, I'm hoping I'm back. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's the Wi-Fi or what's going on here, but I'm just gonna walk around a little bit. So I have I'm also going to have to stop pretty soon because my gimbal's about to die. I forgot to charge it. Haven't had to charge it in a while. I haven't been using it very much because I haven't been doing much content. But anyways, so basically what I want to say is it's worse for me to let this bubble build up on my migraines than it is for me to just let it come out as it should. So that has been really, really helpful. So yeah, anyways, I think that might be where I leave it. I'm almost at a half an hour, guys. Thanks for sticking with me today. Thanks for joining me. This was totally unannounced. That being said, the videos are going to be like this probably for the foreseeable future. I don't know how to word that. Because I just don't know what is happening in like tomorrow, let alone weeks kind of moving ahead. So I don't really know like what my plans are. And so I'm hoping that, oh, thanks, Anne. You too. So Anne says, thank you, Ashley. Have a lovely day, my friend. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being my therapy. It's wonderful. You know, I can see why Zubin likes doing these lives this way and likes doing content this way. Quick, easy way to make video content and quick way to connect with your supporters or your following or however that might be. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end this. Make sure you guys have your notifications on, just because like I said, I don't know when I'm going to be doing these. My schedule really hasn't changed, so that's probably not going to change. But as for when I actually decide to go live, that will probably change. And like the time, I don't know when I'm going to feel the need to make content. But thanks everyone for joining me, and I hope to see you all in the next one, whenever that is. Bye everyone.